Hello, this is Mr. Painter with another fabulous IXL tutorial. Today we're working on IXL D4 exponents with negative bases. Now this IXL can be a little bit frustrating, so I would pay attention closely to the video as we go through two scenarios. All right, scenario number one is notice that we have a set of parentheses around the base number. When we have a set of parentheses around the base number and with a negative in front, that means the negative goes with the number. So let me tell you what that means. So negative 1 to the third power is actually written like this. Negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. Then you just work it out step by step, 2 at a time. Negative 1 times a negative 1 becomes a positive 1. But then you bring down another negative 1. So positive 1 times a negative 1 now becomes negative 1 once again. So the final answer here is negative 1. So again, when the number is inside the parentheses, the negative goes with the number of times the exponent occurs. So this one here, negative 1. Okay, now here's the other scenario. Let's say we have a negative 3 to the second power. Notice that the negative has no set of parentheses. What this actually says right here, let's write it out. Negative 3 to the second power is negative 1 times 3 to the second power. So the negative actually is separated out from the base. It is not part of the exponent without the parentheses. So what happens here is we got negative 1 times 3 times 3. So negative 1 times 3 is going to be negative 3 times a positive 3. And negative 3 times a positive 3 becomes negative 9. So the final answer here is going to be negative 9. Now, why is this important? Let's say for an example, you did negative 3 times negative 3. Well, negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9, but when you separate out the negative 1, notice that the answer is negative 9. So this one here could be a trap into you putting a positive 9, when actually in reality, the answer was a negative 9. So just keep that in mind. So parentheses, include the negative with the number. If it's no parentheses, bring out a negative 1 in front, then make it part of the problem. So negative 9 is the right answer on that one. All right, now check this out. We got negative 3 to the third power, which is actually the same thing that we did here. So this worked out nice because I got my handy dandy note. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to negative 1 times 3 to the third power. And now we got negative 1 times 3 times 3 times one more 3. And remember, negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Bring down that 3 right there. Negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. And now, because we got to add another negative 3, we're going to go ahead and just bring that down. So we got negative 3 and bring down the 3. All right, we're good now. All right, now negative 9 times positive 3 is now negative 27. So on this problem, they just wanted you to go one more 3 to see what it looked like. So negative 27 is the right answer on this one. For the reason being that the negative 1 is separated out at the beginning, then what it does is notice it keeps the answer negative all the way down. Just negative, 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 and continue to be negative. Okay, now we're back to the scenario of a parenthesis. So we have negative 4 in parenthesis to the second power. Well, because it's in parentheses, we keep the negative with both the 4s. So negative 4 times negative 4. And negative 4 times negative 4 is actually positive 16. So positive 16 is our correct answer here. All right, now we got negative 4 to the third power. So notice here that the negative is not without a parenthesis. There's no parentheses here. So what this says is we got negative 1 times 4, 3 4s, times 4 times 4. All right, so going down one section at a time, 2 by 2s, we got Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. Bring down another 4. Negative 4 times a positive 4 is negative 16. Bring down the last 4. And negative 16 times a positive 4 is going to be negative 64. So negative 64 on this one. And what did I put? Oh, I said negative 64. Huh, you got me on tape doing a problem wrong for not putting the negative in front. But it's okay. Now I got more practice and you learn from my mistakes. So here we go. No parentheses. We got negative 1 because there's no parentheses times 2 times 2 because there are two 2's. Negative 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Bring down the last 2. And negative 2 times a positive 2 is negative 4. So it's important to know your multiplications here. And it's also important to know when multiplying a negative times a positive and a negative times a negative, as well as just knowing positive times positive is still positive. All right, carefully here, we're putting negative 4. There we go. Recover my points here. All right, no parentheses, so we got a negative 1 out front, followed by the number of 2's. So we got 2 times 2 times 2. Negative 1 times 2 is going to be negative 2. Bring down another 2. Negative 2 times a positive 2 is going to be negative 4. Bring down another 2. And now we got negative 4 times a positive 2, which is going to be negative 8. So this one here is negative 8. All right, next up we got a negative 1 to the second power. They are in the negative 1 is in parentheses, so we got negative 1 multiply negative 1 twice. And negative 1 times a negative 1 is positive 1. So this one's going to be a positive 1. Okay, next up inside parentheses, we got negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 3 times. So we got negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Bring down the last negative 1. And a positive 1 times a negative 1 is going to be negative 1. So final answer here is negative 1. All right, most interesting one. What happens when you have an exponent of 0? Anything to the 0 power is always equal to 1. Okay, it's always equal to 1. So let's say for an example we have 52 million. So 52 million, which means I need 6 more numbers. 128,658 to the 0 power. You're probably thinking, oh my God. Well, according to the directions here, anything to the 0 power is always going to be equal to 1. So don't panic on that example. So in this case, we got negative 4 to the 0 power is going to be 1. Now be careful with the parentheses. Because we have the parentheses, the whole value of negative 4 is to the 0 power, so that will be a 1. So we made out good on that one. Okay. Let's see here. Negative 1 to the positive 1. Anything to the positive 1 is whatever's in the given to you. So it has to be negative 1. We have negative 3 in parentheses to the 4th power. So we got negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Ugh. Let's beautify that negative right there. times our last -3. All right. Let's do it. Let's change up a little bit. Let's do -3 times -3 is +9. And this also must be a +9 because it's two sets of -3s. So now check this out. We got a 9 times 9, both positives, give you 81. Now, if that was too fancy for you, you can go -3 times -3 is 9. 9 times another -3 is -27. Then -27 times another -3 will take you back to 81. Well, however you want to do it, it's up to you. But I don't know. Just I thought that looked kind of fancy. It also works too. We got me a smart score of 70. Work smart, not hard. But sometimes you got to work hard to be smart too. It's all good. All right. So we got -1 to the second power. So we got -1 times -1. And -1 times -1 is +1. So this one's straightforward. +1 here. We have -1 to the 0 power. We talked about this one before. Anything to the 0 power is always +1. -10 to the first power. The first power represents whatever was already there. So they're telling you, well, you have 1 of -10. Well, 1 of -10 is still -10. And our last problem, we have -5 to the 0 power. Now, this one's tricky because they didn't give you that parentheses. So this one we're going to separate out because I think this could be a possible trap. Now remember, anything to 0 power is 1, but wait a minute, the negative does not have parentheses. So if you go back to no parentheses, that negative comes out separate as -1. And 5 to the 0 power, here, I'm going to write it like this. 5 to the 0 power is +1. So what it looks like is -1 times +1. How tricky is that? So what happens here is -1 times a +1 is now -1. So thinking that, well, -5 to the 0 power, because it's to the 0 power, is 1. If you forgot that negative, you probably get it wrong. So let's try -1 on this one. For the reason that there's no set of parentheses, we had to separate out that -1 like we did on all the other problems. And sure enough, it worked. Smart moves. Fantastic. This concludes your IXL tutorial for IXL D4. Have a fantastic day.